I'm a savage. Classy, bougie, ratchet. Sassy, moody, nasty. Socrates surprised everyone by entering the room, but acting stupid, he just asked, "What's happening?"
It takes a lot to make a stew.
A pinch of salt and laughter too.
A scoop of kids to add the spice.
A dash of love to make it nice. And you've got
Too many cooks.
too many cooks.
Too many cooks. Too many cooks.
Too many cooks.
Too many cooks.
Hello and welcome to Humanities class for Tuesday, April 21st. You see here you have been invited into my kitchen, so thank you for joining me for this very special cooking episode. I want to share with you one of my favorite recipes. This is a very special dish. It comes from the royal palace of France. Hundreds of years ago, this was an exclusive delicacy eaten only by the French royal family. In fact, if you weren't part of the royal family and they caught you trying to eat this as if you were good enough to eat what the king eats, not only would they put you to death, but they would resurrect you and put you to death 47 more times. So we are very lucky to be able to enjoy this special dish. It's called, I left the supply in the closet, it's called a toothpaste coffee grounds bread taco. And it is just as delicious as it sounds. So let's get started. For our ingredients, bread, toothpaste, coffee grounds. That'll wake you right up. Here's what you do. Now listen closely because this is a very complicated recipe. Only master chefs such as myself are able to get this right. Take your slice of bread, add a little bit of toothpaste, top it off with some coffee grounds. Here's a complicated part. Fold it together in the shape of a taco like this, and ladies and gentlemen, you now have a toothpaste, coffee grounds, bread taco. In making this bread taco, we have brought a new being into existence that a minute ago did not exist. And yet all we've done is join parts, ingredients that existed previously, and now they work together in a system. We're not used to using that word system for something as simple as a taco, but it is. A system is a being in which separate beings come together and function as one. A new being is brought into existence without any new matter being brought into existence. And in a system like a taco, all of the beings that previously existed, the bread, the toothpaste, the coffee grounds, continue to exist as separate beings. They are not destroyed when they merge. They remain separate, truly existing beings, but now they have been formed together into the new system, the taco. If I ask what this is, you say it's a coffee ground toothpaste bread taco. But let's say I asked you to zoom out further. You could describe this less specifically, more generally, as food. if I say, what is this food made of? I'm asking a question that comes from biology. Okay? Everything in here was once part of a living being, so to ask what the food is made of, and therefore why the food can nourish our bodies, well, then I'm doing biology. When I don't call it food, when I call it specifically a taco, the discipline is culinary arts, but we've zoomed out to biology. We could zoom out further. Instead of calling it more specifically a food, we just call it a physical thing. And then when we ask what it's made of, we're no longer talking about toothpaste and coffee grounds and bread. Then we're talking about the matter that comes together to make the physical thing. We're talking about the elements. We're talking about atoms. So at that point, we're no longer doing culinary arts or biology. We're doing chemistry and physics. We could zoom out even further. If we want to do what Aristotle says to do on my shirt and get metaphysical, at the most basic level, the furthest zoomed out level, we simply call this a being. What's a being? Well, it's simple. It's something that bees. A being is something that bees. Bees is not a real word that we actually use, but I think you can imagine what it would mean if we did use that word. A being, in philosophy, is anything that you can use a noun to describe. It's a thing. It's stuff. It's the most zoomed out basic level. And when we talk about things not as bread tacos, not as food, but simply as beings, that's when we're doing metaphysics. Metaphysics is the study of being as being. We're going to see in a second, when we're doing metaphysics, when we want to know what goes into a being as being, the system works differently. The ingredients are going to behave differently than they do when we zoom in and get more specific. By the way, specific, it's just the adjective form of species. In general, that's the adjective form of genus. Now that you know that, if you also win the lottery, you will become a millionaire. Okay. Want to show you another example before we come back to the kitchen, so follow me here. The ridiculous-looking person on your screen right now is the 14-year-old version of me. Yesterday I asked you, what are you and what are your ingredients? If you had asked 14-year-old me that question, the most specific answer I could have given to that question was, I am Jeff Childers. That's my name. You don't use it. So we're teacher and student, but if somehow we stay in touch after you graduate, you will. But that would be my most specific answer to the question of, what are you? Well, I'm Jeff Childers, a term that, for the most part applies only to me. Certainly in my high school applied only to me. My name, my specific identity, is something that is only mine. So if you asked 14-year-old me what his ingredients are, what are the things that make him Jeff Childers, it would be things that are very personal to my own story and background. It would be things about my family life. It would be things like I am a giant comic book nerd, and I am the class president, and I think I'm a lot funnier than I actually am. And, it would be about the friends that I had and the girlfriends that I did not. And all of those things unique to me that came together into the system that is Jeff Childers. That would be the most specific answer to the question. If we want to zoom out and get less specific and more general,
would then say, well, I'm a student. Well, all of a sudden, that no longer applies to only me. I'm one of about 800 students at my high school. And the things that combine the ingredients that make me a student are things that I have in common with a lot of people. The fact that I'm 14 years old and the law says I have to go to school. The fact that I do follow that law and do go to school. Those are the ingredients that make me a student. Zoom out further, get more general. What am I? I'm a human being. Now I share that with 7 billion people. It was probably more like 6.5 in the 90s. But a more general answer to that is I am a human being. And now what are the ingredients that make me a human being? Human DNA, human ancestors, a rational mind, empathy, conscience, all other sorts of things that make us human, that we all share in common as humans, but which separates us from every other kind of being in the known universe. Zoom out further, and you would say that I am a great ape. That's not just because I'm covered head to toe in red monkey fur, but because that is the family of creatures that we belong to, along with gorillas and orangutans and chimpanzees, bonobos, and others. Zoom out further than that, you would say that I am a mammal. What are the ingredients that makes me a mammal? Well, I was born alive, and rather than hatched from an egg, as are other members of our species. So I am a mammal. Zoom out even further. I'm an animal. Okay. What makes us animals? Now that's something. See, notice how we started with something that is only me, and now we've zoomed out to a category that includes billions and billions and billions of creatures. This is something I have in common with a dog and also a rat and also a worm and a cockroach. That's the kingdom we're part of. We're animals. We eat, we move, we have some sort of sense perception. Those are the ingredients that go in and make us animals. Zoom out further. I'm a living being. Okay. Now that's something I have in common with plants and bacteria. What are the ingredients that make us living beings? Nutrition and mortality and carrying on the species and all of that. Living beings. Zoom out further. Physical being. Now it's something that I have in common with everything in the universe that's made out of atoms. And now what are the ingredients that make me a physical being? It's precisely that. Atoms. Okay. I'm not a figment of your imagination. I'm not a nightmare that you just haven't woken up from yet, at least as far as I know. I'm not an idea in someone's head. I'm not a force of nature. I'm a physical being made of physical parts. And now we can zoom out even further, the furthest possible level, and just like the toothpaste coffee ground bread taco, at the furthest, the furthest, I'm a teacher, can you tell? The furthest, most general level, I am a being. A being. Notice that noun, being, that we use as a noun, as the subject of a sentence, is actually a verb. Words that end in ing in English, we call them gerund verbs. There's a significance to that. All right. At the most fundamental level, we are not so much things as we are actions. The act of existence. Weeks ago, before we slowed things down so we never actually talked about it, I asked you to tell me what the first action you ever performed was. And many of you had very great, very reasonable answers, crying or taking a breath. But the first action you ever performed was the act of being, the act of existence. A being is an act of existence, or if we want to keep it a noun, something that exists, something that bees. Metaphysics, what Plato and Aristotle have been doing as they explore the nature of reality, is just that. It's the study of being. What does it mean to exist? The circle here represents how Aristotle sees being. And it can be any being. It can be me or you. It can be a taco. It can be a shoe, a worm, the sun, the universe. Any being, when you zoom out all the way to the most general level, where we simply look at that being as a being, Aristotle says that being has two ingredients. Those ingredients are matter and form. But the ingredients of being behave differently than the ingredients of my taco. In my taco, the three main ingredients, bread, toothpaste, coffee grounds, those ingredients were separate things that existed before they came together into the system that we call a taco, and that continued to exist. So even when there was that new being, that taco, there was still toothpaste that was toothpaste, coffee grounds that was coffee, and bread that was bread. The ingredients were distinct and separately, independently existing things. The ingredients of being are distinct. There's matter and there's form, but matter and form do not exist independently. What the heck am I talking about? Maybe you never know the answer to that question, but here you probably really don't know the answer to that question. So let's see if we can explain. And that's why I've chosen a circle as our model. If we think about a circle, it might be funny to ask, like I did yesterday, what the ingredients of a circle are. But if I tell you that the ingredients of a circle are circumference and diameter, hopefully we all have enough geometry to make sense out of that statement. And to be honest with you, that's about as much geometry as I know. But the ingredients of a circle, we could say, are circumference and diameter. Circumference, that's the outer ring there. That's how big the circle is around. Diameter, that's how long the circle is across. You bring those two ingredients together, circumference and diameter, you have a circle. But unlike the ingredients of my taco, the ingredients of a circle do not exist independently. If you take away circumference, take away the outer ring, then the diameter, the distance across, collapses out of existence. If the circumference is 0, then it doesn't make any sense to say, well, it's 0 around, but how big is it across? No, that makes no sense. The circumference and diameter depend on one another for their existence. Same with the diameter. Take that away. Say the circle is 0 across. How big is it around? Well, it's not. That's how big around it is. It's just not. Circumference and diameter, though they're distinct, you know I'm asking different questions when I say how big is it around and how big is it across. We can draw that distinction. We can understand how they are different things, and yet they are interdependent. Each one calls the other into existence. Each one depends on the other for existence. You can't have one without the other. It's the same way for matter and form, the basic ingredients of all being. What is matter? Matter is the stuff a thing is made out of. It's basically what it sounds like. Matter's the stuff that a being is made of. And what's form for Aristotle? Well, we know that now. Form is a being's characteristics and traits. A chicken's matter is flesh and blood and feathers. Its form is that it hatched from an egg and clucks like a chicken and lays eggs itself and tastes pretty good with barbecue sauce. Matter is the stuff a thing is made of. Form is that thing's characteristics and traits. You need them both to have a being, and yet they don't exist independently. You cannot have matter without form any more than you can have circumference without diameter. Think about what matter without form would mean. Something that's just stuff. What is that? It's stuff. What kind of stuff? No kind of stuff, just stuff. No, that's not a meaningful statement. Stuff that is not a particular kind of stuff cannot actually exist. So the matter, the stuff, has to have a form, has to have characteristics and traits that then call the matter into existence. It's the same with form. This I illustrated when I took a pretzel bag and I wadded it up into the form of a ball. Well, the pretzel bag is the matter, and ballness is the form. If I destroy the pretzel bag, the form of a ball also does not exist. Form requires matter in order to exist. It's like, if you've read Alice in Wonderland, there's the Cheshire Cat that has a smile but no face. Well, that's not a meaningful statement. You have to be hallucinating for some reason to even imagine what a smile without a face would be. It's the same with matter without form. So matter and form are the two ingredients of being that depend on each other for existence. In the saying "it be like that," matter is the "it be," and form is the "like that." It be like that. Matter's the "it be," form is the "like that." What this tells us is that there is, at least in Aristotle's model of being, there is an awesome mystery sort of sewn into the very fabric of reality. Every being has matter and form. Matter cannot exist without form. Form cannot exist without matter. Then how does anything exist? Where does the matter come from? Form makes it exist. But where did the form come from? Oh, matter makes it exist. So how was the form able to call the matter into being if there was no matter to call the form into being? How is there anything rather than nothing? That's the most fundamental, basic, mind-blowing mystery of all reality in metaphysics. And I pause to make that point because I want to shine a light on the fact that existence is weird and reality is fascinating. You know, Plato had the sort of bizarre multi-dimensional model of reality that you may not buy, but at least it wasn't boring. We can be tempted to think that if we're going to follow Aristotle and his emphasis on physical things and the scientific approach to reality, that somehow science takes the magic and the mystery out of reality. And that's not true at all. And I hope there's nobody that is resistant to real evidence-based scientific explanations for our world because maybe they're afraid that kind of takes the poetry out of life, takes the mystery out of life, flushes the magic down the toilet. And what metaphysics tells us is that no, there is still a lot of room for awe and wonder and amazement that reality gets more intense and more interesting the closer you look at it. Aristotle's model of being, the ingredients of being, are matter and form. Matter is the stuff that a being is made of. Form is that being's characteristics and traits.
Now, you didn't think that we were going to end without the grand finale where we taste this delicious toothpaste coffee ground bread taco, did you? All right, here goes. It's really the bread taco. Ew, 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 ew. Nope, 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 nope. I hate you all so much right now. Class dismissed.
Walk around a lot a bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So slip back in your hole, or get back in your cave. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone